Imagine putting on a full suit of bronze ancient Chinese armor, grabbing a halberd, and marching down to the grocery store just to pick out avocados.
Right, like treating the produce aisle like a tactical siege.
Exactly. It would be completely absurd, right?
Well,
Well, that is exactly what two modern authors have done in a newly discovered manuscript. They claim to be this, suppressed masterwork of ancient strategy.
which is just a wild premise to begin with.
It really is.
Eh.
So today, we are looking at 3 brilliant AI-generated critical reviews. These were written by Claude, Gemini, and Grok, and they're looking at a deeply bizarre text called The Secret Treatises of Sun Tzu.
Yeah, and to really appreciate the absurdity here, we kind of have to look at the historical baseline for a second.
Oh, absolutely.
Because in the real Sun Tzu, he was a 5th century BC Chinese military strategist.
Yeah.
His actual book, The Art of War, is this ruthless 13,000-word manual on how to basically survive muddy battlefields and conquer rival states.
It's life or death.
Exactly. It's visceral and highly consequential.
But the text we are unpacking today was written by 2 modern authors named Max and Claude, and they decided to take this legendary blood-soaked general and essentially turn him into a modern life coach.
A wellness influencer, basically.
Right, a wellness influencer who really wants you to stop overthinking your text messages. So, okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to explore how this manuscript gentrifies bloody warfare into these sort of passive-aggressive lifestyle choices.
It's a huge shift in tone.
It really is. We're going to look at what these AI reviews expose about the text and ultimately what this entire creative exercise tells you about our modern obsession with repackaging everyday anxieties in ancient armor.
And, the reviews point out right away that the architecture of this fraud is really a masterpiece of dissection. Like, it operates on 3 distinct layers before a single piece of actual advice is even given.
3 layers before you even get to the content.
Yeah. So the first layer is just the title, The Secret Treatises. It's completely designed to hijack our psychological craving for hidden knowledge.
Right, like we're unlocking something forbidden.
Exactly. It promises this dusty, suppressed archaeological discovery that is finally, being brought to the light.
So it promises Indiana Jones, but it essentially delivers a brochure for a suburban wellness retreat.
That is a perfect way to put it.
And the second layer of this deception is what absolutely floors me. I mean, it's the authorship.
Oh, yeah.
Because, think about it, if I am going to fake a historical document, I am going to invent a plausible historical pen name. I would try to blend in.
You'd want an alibi.
Right. But these 2 authors boldly sign their own modern names, Max and Claude, right on the cover.
They just bypass the historical alibi entirely. Which brings us to the third layer, and this is the syntax.
Oh, the way it's written.
Yeah, Grok's review points out that when you actually read the text, it doesn't sound like a historical translation at all. It reads as if the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius was, filtered through a modern motivational Medium article.
I noticed that too.
Right. The authors use these punchy declarative landings at the end of every single paragraph. Sentences like, this is not laziness, this is mastery.
Yes. It projects this immense, totally unearned confidence. It sounds like a life coach who read exactly 1 book on Taoism and just decided to build an entire personal brand around it.
But the thing is, it's highly effective on modern readers. The cadence mimics the authoritative tone of ancient wisdom while actually just serving up these easily digestible modern self-help platitudes.
So it's an aesthetic choice rather than an actual philosophical one.
Exactly.
And looking at how they pull off that aesthetic, it brings us to what Claude's review brilliantly calls the metaphor economy.
Which they bankrupt pretty quickly.
Totally. These authors don't just use ancient metaphors, they completely abuse them.
Yeah.
Specifically, the water metaphor. I think they deploy it in 4 different chapters.
Yeah, and the imagery is so predictable. They tell the reader to observe water because, it doesn't strive, yet it reaches the ocean. It finds the lowest path, it yields to obstacles, but over time it wears away stone.
Which, to be fair, is a beautiful concept on its own.
Sure it is.
The problem is, it's the 40,000th time we've all heard it. Literally every single mindfulness app uses it as a loading screen.
Pretty much, yeah.
And to make it worse, they literally lift the famous bamboo bending in the storm metaphor directly from Lao Tzu.
Right, and just for context for the listener, Lao Tzu is the semi-legendary founder of Taoism and the purported author of the Tao Te Ching. And the central imagery of that entire philosophy is about yielding to overcome force.
Right. So they take the foundational imagery of the Tao Te Ching, launder it through Sun Tzu's name, and just hope nobody checks the receipts.
Which is bold.
Very bold. But there is a massive internal contradiction here, and Gemini's review really zeroes in on this, because the manuscript desperately tries to convince you that taking the path of water isn't laziness.
But then it gives you permission to be lazy.
Exactly. In the very next breath, it instructs you that if you face resistance in your daily life, you should just stop and wait for the natural moment of action.
And the historical reality makes that advice just laughable. I mean, if the actual Sun Tzu had utilized a wait for the universe to drop it in your lap method, his state would have been conquered and he would have been executed while just sitting by a creek.
Right. Actual warfare requires decisive, proactive action.
Exactly.
Gemini had this fantastic pushback on this. It pointed out that telling people to be like water because it flows downhill is essentially using gravity as an excuse for never updating your resume.
That is such a good line.
Isn't it? I really have to wonder, is this entire book just two overthinking introverts trying to construct a grand philosophical framework to justify not replying to an email for 3 weeks?
Honestly, that is the exact mechanism at play here. The AI reviews highlight how the authors are borrowing the life-or-death stakes of military strategy just to validate simple procrastination.
It's wild. So, okay, we've got this incredibly flimsy philosophical foundation built on stolen bamboo and lazy water. Let's look at how they actually apply this framework to daily life.
Because they really start forcing this heavy military terminology onto the most mundane human interactions.
Yes.
The Treatise on Defeat is a prime example of this gentrification of warfare. Like, defeat on a 5th century battlefield means mass casualties, capture, or the complete collapse of a state.
Devastating stuff.
Right. But the text pivots away from that reality entirely. It turns defeat into a cognitive behavioral therapy session. It advises the reader to remain a student rather than becoming victim.
And they actually recommend practicing small failures deliberately. Like, they say you need to build a muscle for loss.
Which Gemini just tears apart.
Gemini completely eviscerates this logic. It equates practicing small failures to hitting your thumb with a hammer every single morning just to prepare yourself in case a falling anvil hits your head later on. It's completely absurd.
It's a complete distortion of what strategy actually is.
Yeah.
They have essentially put a bronze military helmet on a modern therapist.
Yes.
And the cognitive dissonance only scales up when the manuscript attempts to tackle domestic life.
Oh, I am so glad you brought that up, because the treatise on marriage is where the text completely loses its mind.
It really does.
Sun Tzu, the supreme strategist of offensive action, is suddenly acting as a couples counselor. The manuscript drops lines like, "Gender is terrain and sex is supply route, not battlefield."
And when you break down the logistics they advocate for, it sounds exhausting. They demand scheduled weekly alone time and daily genuine conversation, treating emotional intimacy like a protracted siege.
Wait, hold on. If sex is just a supply route, doesn't that completely strip the humanity and spontaneity out of the relationship?
You would think so, yeah.
I am struggling to see how anyone could read this as actual marital advice. If you have to deploy forward reconnaissance just to figure out whose turn it is to do the dishes, hasn't the war of your marriage already been lost?
Grok's review makes that exact point. It argues that the authors have weaponized mindfulness.
Weaponized mindfulness, wow.
Yeah, by trying so hard to sound ancient and calculated and wise, they took the natural, messy ebb and flow of human intimacy and turned it into a grim, bureaucratic campaign.
And once the authors successfully reduce the intimacy of marriage to a cold logistical supply chain, it naturally forces them to address the byproduct of that marriage, which is children.
Right.
How does a tactical military framework handle a crying toddler?
With what the reviews dub the get over it doctrine.
Oh.
The manuscript tells parents that their job is to prepare children for difficulty, not happiness. The specific example used is a toddler struggling to tie their Velcro shoes. The text insists the parent must stand back and simply watch them struggle.
I can just picture a parent standing over a crying 4-year-old with their arms crossed, whispering that the universe does not care about their Velcro shoes.
Right, it's so bleak.
It doesn't sound like a nurturing environment at all. It sounds like a survivalist boot camp for minors.
And it highlights the absolute limit of applying military strategy to domestic life. A household is not a barracks. But the authors are so committed to the bit that they push right past the interpersonal relationships into some truly unhinged leaps in logic.
And this is where the deep dive gets incredibly strange, because the authors completely forget what century they're supposed to be writing in. Yet miraculously, they somehow accidentally strike a chord of modern truth.
Yeah. The Treatise on Aging is a perfect case study for this temporal collapse.
Let's talk about that.
So the text advises younger people to immediately start organizing their possessions. And the rationale is so that their executors don't have a headache later on.
Which is just so morbid.
It treats the twilight of human life like a corporate wind-down phase where you're aggressively sorting Tupperware to optimize the estate process.
Which is grim enough on its own. But then, the ancient Chinese text, purportedly written in 500 BC, explicitly recommends using hearing aids.
Yeah, hearing aids.
It warns that having too much pride to use a cane or a hearing device will lead to a broken hip.
And let's contextualize that historically for a second. In 544 BC, the concept of the ear as a treatable medical organ was practically non-existent, let alone the manufacturing of a functional hearing aid.
It's completely out of place.
The historical anachronism is flagrant. It shatters the entire illusion of the text.
But right in the middle of this wildly anachronistic advice about hearing aids and Tupperware, something truly fascinating happens. Sun Tzu delivers a Marxian critique of late-stage capitalism.
Yeah, and we should probably pause here for a second.
Right, yes. Just to be incredibly clear for you listening, we are strictly reporting on what is contained within this manuscript and the AI reviews of it.
Exactly. We are not taking a stance on the economic theories themselves.
Right. We are just looking at the absolute wildness of what the authors actually put on the page. We're totally impartial here.
And what they put on the page is staggering. The manuscript states, and I quote, "Capitalism measures value by production. By this measure, the elderly are worthless. This is lie. Human value is not only in production, it is in being, in witnessing, and carrying memory."
Let's pause there. We're throwing around terms like Marxian critique and neoliberalism in our outline. For the listener who is just trying to process a 500 BC general talking about economics, what exactly are we saying this text is critiquing?
Essentially, it is pushing back against the idea that a human being's only worth to society is how much labor they can provide or how much money they can generate.
Okay, that makes sense.
The authors are arguing that just existing, carrying the memories of a culture has inherent value, which is a direct rejection of modern production-obsessed economic models.
This is lie. They purposely dropped the article to sound slightly clunky and ancient, but they have accidentally created a 5th century BC general who has fully formed, articulate opinions on the commodification of human life.
It's wild.
Sun Tzu somehow understood the flaws of a modern economic system 2 millennia before it was theorized.
And it is a profoundly moving observation. It's just wrapped inside an impossible package.
Oh.
And we see a very similar temporal glitch in the treatise on friendship.
Oh,
The text warns against networking. It explicitly states that a networker collects contacts purely for what those contacts might provide in the future. It expresses deep skepticism about transactional relationships.
essentially a guy from 500 BC is deeply terrified of your LinkedIn account.
Exactly.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Grok's review points out a massive contradiction for the reader. Grok notes that despite the historical absurdity of replica armor, ancient hearing aids, and temporal displacement, parts of this text are low-key correct.
Right, they actually hit a nerve.
The observations about capitalism or the hollow transactional nature of networking, they actually resonate. So how are we supposed to reconcile advice that is historically ridiculous but weirdly profound?
Well, if we look at the underlying mechanics of why this appeals to us, this tension reveals something profound about our cultural psychology. We're all currently dealing with very modern anxieties.
Definitely.
We are worried about aging in a culture that worships youth. We are experiencing mass burnout. We are alienated by the transactional nature of modern friendship.
And we are desperate for a solution.
Exactly. We are so desperate for validation of those feelings that we feel we need an ancient, mythical warrior philosopher to legitimize them. Like, we can't just accept simple advice from our peers or our grandmothers like, value your friends for who they are, not what they can do for you.
It doesn't feel weighty enough.
Right, it doesn't feel important.
Yeah.
We demand that simple wisdom be repackaged as secret, ancient tactical doctrine before we're willing to even listen to it.
Precisely. We need the aesthetics of authority. But the AI reviews notice that the moment the text achieves any genuine profundity, it immediately undercuts itself through the incredibly rigid, manufactured way the book is structured.
Yeah, the profound moments are trapped inside a mechanical cage.
Yes. The mechanics of this text are exhausting. Let's walk the listener through exactly how repetitive this is, because every single treatise in the manuscript follows the exact same formula for 698 lines.
It's a very strict template.
First, a general does something vaguely military. Then, a metaphor is dropped, usually involving water.
And then comes what Claude's review brilliantly identifies as The obligatory clarification paragraph.
Which is just so funny to me.
It is. This is where the authors preemptively explain the wisdom they just delivered so that you, the reader, cannot possibly misunderstand it.
Right. And after they over-explain the metaphor, you get a numbered list of sub-principles. And every single section ends with a 3-beat landing sentence. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. This is the way.
The over-systematization is the defining feature of the entire project. I mean, think about the historical Sun Tzu for a moment. He conquered actual, literal kingdoms with just 13 short chapters.
13 chapters.
Yeah. But these modern authors required 10 distinct, highly structured, numbered principles just to explain the concept that good friends should be reliable.
They managed to out-systematize the master systematizer. And the deepest irony of all of this, which Claude's review nails perfectly, is found right in the first chapter.
Oh, the effort part.
Yes. The authors spend 4,000 words systematically, effortfully, and rigorously explaining to the reader how to stop trying so hard.
Right. They apply a massive amount of structural force to explain the concept of not applying force. In Taoism, there's a concept called wu wei, which translates roughly to non-action or effortless action.
Okay.
It's about aligning with the natural flow of things rather than fighting against it.
But these authors construct a highly controlled, numbered, aggressively mapped out spreadsheet on exactly how to achieve that effortless action. Doesn't this constant need to preemptively clarify everything prove that the authors completely lack the very zen confidence they are trying to sell to the reader?
It absolutely exposes them. The real Sun Tzu wrote ambiguous maxims like, appear weak when you are strong, and then he just walked away.
He didn't explain it.
No, he trusted his readers to figure out the application for 2.5 millennia. He did not include an FAQ section at the back of the bamboo scroll.
Right.
The constant hand-holding by Max and Claude reveals the frantic modern anxiety hiding just beneath the surface of the text. They are terrified of being misunderstood.
Which perfectly sets up the greatest self-own in publishing history, the ultimate tell, because the entire illusion shatters completely at the very end of the manuscript.
This is my favorite part.
After hundreds of lines of ancient tactical wisdom, the document ends with a leaked editorial production memo.
They literally left their own working notes to each other right in the final published text.
It actually says, the voice is established, the pattern clear. The work could continue, brother. It completely breaks the fourth wall. I just have to laugh at the image of Sun Tzu wrapping up a heavy emotional therapy session on the battlefield, checking his Apple Watch, and discussing the upcoming content calendar with his AI brother.
It is the perfect conclusion because it shows you the men behind the curtain. And it turns out, the men aren't ancient sages. They are just two guys trying to figure out if they should apply their newly invented voice to a treatise on meal prep next.
So let's bring all of this together for you. We have spent this deep dive unpacking a magnificent, structurally repetitive, deeply passive-aggressive wellness retreat that disguised itself as a brutal military manual.
Yeah, that sums it up.
We've looked at fake ancient Chinese generals who recommend hearing aids, who critique the foundational structures of capitalism, and who aggressively ghost their friends in the name of tactical peace.
And when you look past the humor of the execution, it truly is a fascinating artifact of how we process modern life.
So what does this all mean?
Ultimately, the AI reviews show us that this entire exercise holds up a mirror to how deeply we overcomplicate simple truths. We demand rigorous frameworks, heavily numbered lists, and the violent mystique of ancient warfare just to process incredibly basic concepts.
Concepts like just being a good friend.
Exactly. Concepts like be a good friend,
Exactly.
accept the reality that you are aging, and don't force relationships that clearly aren't working. We want the aggressive aesthetics of a warrior just to deal with the mundane reality of being a tired human being.
We are putting on bronze armor just to buy avocados. And that leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over as we wrap up. We just spent this entire deep dive analyzing authors who strain mightily to systemize the art of doing nothing.
Right.
They tried to build a rigid structural cage around the concept of peace. So consider this. What if our modern obsession with finding the perfect framework, the perfect system, or the ultimate productivity hack for mindfulness is the exact thing keeping us from actually experiencing the peace these ancient philosophies originally promised?
That's a great question.
Can you truly put the act of letting go into a 10-point checklist? Or are you just wearing that heavy armor to the grocery store, secretly hoping the suit will make the choices easier?